Mary Lou Birmingham took my sister Geneviève's tooth this morning. I saw her leaving the house when I got up to make breakfast. I only saw the back of her head as she walked out our front door, but I would recognize those bright red curls anywhere. This wasn't anything out of the ordinary, at least not here in Point Pine. That's just what the collectors do. They collect stuff. No one really knows why or what they do with it, except for Mary Lou. We've seen her wearing jewelry made from the teeth of the people of Point Pine. She obviously doesn't wear all the teeth, and that would be weird. And so I've always wondered what she did with the rest of them. Last year, when our hamster Pennies died, Curtis Mann came to take it from us. He collects dead animals. Those are the only two collectors that I'm familiar with, but there's 12 in total, and they all live at the Point Pine Oaks. Recently, the collectors have been behaving a little weirder than usual. Today, when I went on my run, I saw all of them walking in two single-file lines down the road. I had never seen all 12 of them together at the same time, so I stopped to observe. They were walking weirdly. They would put one foot in front of the other, then stop for a second. Then bring their other foot forward, then stop for a second. They walked like that all the way down the road, headed for the shops in the center of Point Pine. I saw them again about an hour later when I walked to Point Pine Bakery to pick up a pie for my mom. As I was waiting for them to bring my order out, Mary Lou walked up to me. "Hey, Lee," she said, sounding a bit sad. "Hey, are you alright?" Mary Lou sighed, and I glanced down at the chain she wore around her neck that contained a small glass bottle that was filled with teeth. Suddenly, that pie didn't sound so appetizing. "Why would I be alright?" she asked. I stared at her, not really knowing how to answer. "Haven't you heard about the visitor?" I shook my head slowly and then glanced over to see if anyone was on their way with my pie yet. No offense to Mary Lou, but she had a tendency of making people feel uncomfortable. Mary Lou sighed again and then reached out and placed her hand on my arm. She wore a ring with a tooth on each one of her fingers. I tried not to gag. "Be cautious with your eyes, Lee. I would hate for you to lose them again," she said, staring at me intently with her huge green eyes. I watched as she walked away. The spot where her hand had rested on my arm felt noticeably colder than the rest of my body, and I rubbed my arm until the feeling went away. I finally got my pie and headed outside. I looked down the road and saw the collectors were back in their two lines, walking in that weird way that they had been earlier. I watched them for a few seconds. Mary Lou turned around and we locked eyes. She brought both her hands up to her face and covered her eyes before turning back around and continuing her walk. I turned around and started walking back home, thinking about how Mary Lou was quite possibly the most unsettling 11-year-old that I had ever met. On the way back home, I overheard a few conversations about the collectors. The people of Point Pine were starting to become irritated with them, convinced that they were playing some sort of weird prank on everyone. When I got home, my mom was talking about them too. Can you believe it? They told Sanders' kid that he needed to keep an eye on his arms because he might lose them. I mean, who says that to an 8-year-old? Mary Lou told me to be cautious with my eyes, I said as I stepped in and set the pie down on the kitchen table. "What?" my dad snapped. "I'm sure it's fine. They're just weird," I replied. "They told Cody that the parade was coming back to get him soon," my mom said. Cody had come back to Point Pine a few months ago and had survived the Point Pine parade twice now. He'd been staying with us for a while now, but spent most of his time locked in his room in the basement. She said something about a visitor. "What?" my dad asked. At that same time, my mom asked, "Who?" "Mary Lou. She asked me if I had heard about the visitor." "What visitor?" my mom said. "I don't know. She didn't give me a name." My parents spent the majority of the day questioning what Mary Lou and the rest of the collectors were talking about. and that evening, we all got a flyer slipped under our front doors. I was sitting on the couch when it flew across the floor. I walked over and picked it up. It was a black piece of paper with the words, "Beware the visitor," scrawled crudely at the top in white crayon. Below that, in neat writing, also in white crayon, it read the following: "Residents of Point Pine, tomorrow at 7 a.m., we will have a visitor. We advise you not to interact with him," which shouldn't be a problem since no one is allowed up until 8:13 a.m. "He will use this time to wander around the town, and even your homes. If you hear him, simply pretend to be asleep. He is here to take from you, but as long as you don't interact with him, you will be fine. Be careful. The collectors." It didn't take long for the people to freak out. Sure, we were all used to weird things happening in Point Pine, but how did the collectors know so much about this? Some people walked over to the Oaks to try and speak to the collectors, but apparently Eric wasn't letting anyone in. Not that I blame him after being stuck in that weird time loop with him. I understood his caution when it came to the people that he allowed inside his building. Eventually, people returned to their homes and went to bed. There was this odd feeling like something really bad was going to happen. I tried my best to ignore it and went to bed at my usual time, tossing and turning for a few minutes before finally falling asleep. I awoke when I heard the front door creak open. I turned over in bed and looked at the clock. 7:55 a.m. My heart sped up in my chest as I realized that the visitor was here. I could hear the footsteps coming up from the stairs, and I turned my back so I was facing my bedroom door, and I shut my eyes, trying to even my breathing. As the visitor got closer, I noticed that he was humming a very familiar tune. It took a few minutes before I realized that it was the same music that played whenever the Point Pine parade started. The visitor never stepped into my room, but I heard him wandering around the rest of the house for what felt like hours. Finally, I heard him walk back out the door. I breathed a sigh of relief as I slowly turned back around to look at the clock. 8:08 a.m., 5 minutes until we could be up. I laid there, staring at the ceiling and waiting for the town alarm to ring. Before it did, however, I heard a scream pierce through the morning silence. It sounded like it was coming from the house next door. I froze in bed, not wanting to take a look and risk seeing something that I shouldn't. Mary Lou's voice kept echoing in my mind as I laid there, waiting for the town alarms to go off. "Be cautious with your eyes, Lee. I would hate for you to lose them again." Finally, the town alarms went off and I climbed out of bed and made my way downstairs, the rest of my family and Cody following me. I walked over to the living room window and pulled the curtains open a few inches to look outside. Most of the neighbors were out there now, crowding on the Humphreys lawn. My dad opened the front door and Cody and I followed after him, making our way through the crowd of people to try and see what was going on. We pushed through until we got to the front of the crowd and finally managed to see what the big deal was. On the front lawn was the entire Humphreys family. All four of them, laying on their backs and facing up towards the sky, their eyes darting around the crowd of people above them. Their noses and mouths were completely gone. Everything below their eyes had just vanished and was simply replaced with smooth skin. No nose, no nostril, no lips, just eyes and smooth skin all the way down their faces. Above their heads was a copy of the flyer that I had gotten last night, stuck in the grass by a rusty butcher knife. Only this flyer was a bit different. It was written on white paper in red font, and it read, "Welcome, the visitor," at the top. The rest of the flyer said as follows: "Residents of Point Pine, tomorrow at 7 a.m., we will have a visitor. You have been chosen to interact with him. Congratulations. He will use this time to wander around town, and even your homes. When you hear him, get up and say hello. It is an honor to be chosen. He is here to see you and only you. Be happy, be nice, and don't put up a fight. It won't be worth it. The Visitor.